Good morning, Danette.
Morning.
How are you this fine day?
Great.
Uh, we're here to talk about health. And we're here to really, I think, start our first crusade on getting people to understand that this thing we call health is a trade. Trading them out of some of their old habits. For a person that's really stubborn, that's hard to do, and you're experiencing that. But we want to trade them from that old beat up body, sick, and so on and so forth, for really a fresh one. And we've both got a story to tell on what we had to do to get to that point, to what we're talking about here. And so, with that said, our first discussion would be where we came from. How did we get here? What's the principles that we began to work from? And this thing called the old pyramid. You remember?
The food pyramid, yes.
What do you think of that?
Never agreed with it.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
never agreed with it.
So take us through what you saw back there and what the changes were that you made along those lines.
Well, it's a pyramid, meaning the most that we're supposed to always have at the bottom to the least that we're supposed to have at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that needed to be switched and be tipped up and changed around onto that, and realizing that it's just not sometimes the food. There's other things to go along with.
Okay.
that.
So here we have a chart that was designed for us by the U.S. Agriculture, and they said that the very foundation of this is bucket loads of grains and carbohydrates. And,
Right, and like you just said, it's by the Department of Agriculture.
well, what's wrong with that?
What's at the bottom?
Grains?
Exactly,
Okay.
which was produced. It was produced. They had multiple grains to produce supposedly loads of people at one time
Okay.
onto there, but
Okay.
they did not break down of how much we should be in our body and how much we should be taking in daily.
And from that we've developed what?
All kinds of diseases.
And what? Obesity.
Exactly, which is a disease, heart disease. I mean, all of it.
Okay, so as we look at this whole thing, we see at the top of the pyramid a small amount of fats,
Correct.
and yet we have been told for years and years and years that fats are basically bad for us. Fair?
Right.
So if we created our own little pyramid, you and me,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what we know today, where would we first start?
So we're starting at the bottom onto there. I mean, I think eating has to start with emotion, stress, all of that of what's going to make us eat.
Okay, and if we started from there and we said, all right, let's hormonally get control of our diet, we would have to probably take in some things that kicked up the dopamine so we feel good about ourselves,
Right.
rather than the sugars and the games that triggered that oh boy, I got a positive effect. And if we did that, then our next meal would be kind of along the lines of filled with fruits and nuts and
Right.
berries and things of that nature.
Mhm.
What is the outcome of that?
Eating better, one, it's natural
Uh-huh.
onto there. Energy, all of that.
So if we're really playing this game, looking at it from okay, which ones out there do I eat? How would we measure the value of a food?
On frequency?
On frequencies?
Mhm.
Whether alive or dead?
Correct.
So if we took an overall look at the body and said, gosh, the brain functions, in a megahertz speed of about 90, the brain does, and the overall body functions somewhere in the high 60s, and we began to eat foods that had a zero frequency, what would we do to the overall frequency of the body?
It'd be really good for the body.
I mean, if we ate things that didn't have anything,
Oh, then that's where we get issues with the body.
and the frequencies drop,
Yes.
incorporate an environment for disease to live.
Correct. Then the
Now,
disease comes.
You work as a trainer and a nutritionalist, and
Right.
and the people that come to you, what do you see in what they're trying to do?
Change their lifestyle. I mean, that's the big, they're coming in, I don't feel good, my joints hurt, I want to lose weight. That's the main thing. They're just not happy with themselves.
Do they believe you when you tell them that maybe a different diet change and workout is part of the picture, but how do you address that?
A lot of people come in and that's the first thing they think. I start talking diet with them, and you can't believe how many people says, "Oh, my diet's okay,"
Mm-hmm.
until we start breaking it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of where we start talking, and then it's like, I want you to keep a food diary for like 10 days. And I want you to write everything. Well, you get that look on their face that they're already nervous because you know that their diet is not as good as they're saying it is.
So a little bit about you.
Mhm.
You came from a background of what?
Well, we can, if we're talking education, or if we're talking health-wise.
Health-wise.
Okay.
You're a bright gal.
Yes. So health-wise, a very overweight child, fought my weight my whole life. I went up and down in weight, lose 85 pounds here, gain some back and forth.
You'd lose 85 pounds?
Yeah. That was not even with having kids. I mean, so women, if we're going to talk women in general, they, depending on how many kids they have, they can gain and lose weight a few times through their life, or stress, they start gaining weight, so then they want to lose back and forth.
So the emotional side is what you're starting to lean toward.
Correct, yes.
And one of the, if we could address that with foods derived from plants, such as sesquiterpenes and monoterpenes, that would literally maybe rearrange damaged DNA, which is part of the whole food chain that we can lay our hands on, would that make sense?
It would, and getting the people educated of
Okay.
what that means and what they should be choosing to eat.
And probably have some kind of a responsibility in a coordination to where people can look to people like you as support.
Correct.
They need that desperately.
Yes.
So as we go through life, we're looking at folks that have gone up and down and up and down,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know exactly where they are. And we're talking about consistency, so
Right.
it's a discipline.
Very much a discipline.
So putting this whole thing together and dealing with the fat issue, I'd like to address this simple little statement that I read some time ago. And it says something to the effect: the seeker should not quit until he finds. When you see that or listen to it, what are your immediate thoughts?
People's always searching for the next best thing
Mhm.
onto there. And sometimes it's just the simple things that's right there. And if we're talking eating, it's eating what is natural to us.
So
That's
we
a lot of it.
literally rush past the obvious to get to the absurd.
Correct. Yeah.
Isn't that unique? And yet, when we do find, what is it that we become? I know what I did. I was just miffed beyond description when I saw what was presented to me through the advertising agents, through different methods of getting information to me. I was really put away when I saw what they had done. And you?
Right. Exactly. Onto there.
You were?
Yeah.
So then suddenly, after we've been disturbed, we're astonished. We just kind of can't believe what we believed.
Right.
And now suddenly here we are. You've lost a bunch of weight for the how many time?
Yeah.
And I bring an old body beat up thing, But actually, I made my change about 25 years ago when I looked in the mirror and I said, I really don't like what I'm seeing, nor do I like the house that it's built, so to speak, and nor do I want to go into the next 20 years with the aches and pains and the oldness,
Right.
the aging process. So how do we change that? Let's talk about really what makes health. I'm going to say that endurance, strength, calmness, all of these things make up financial, spiritual comfort.
Right.
And when you talk to your folks that are coming to you for assistance, where do you start with them?
I start a lot with how they eat, and then we do go into how's your work, the stress, where does that, all of that comes in. Sometimes people will come in and just say, I just woke up one day and I'm like this. It's like, well, you're not. What is the pathways you have taken to get you here?
Okay.
And then we want to make sure that we don't keep going on that same pathway. We want to start something new.
What's your recovery rate with folks?
To keeping with their healthy lifestyle,
Uh-huh.
Pretty good. They do, after you start opening up their eyes and seeing what's right for their body. We have so many things out there that eat this, do this exercise. Not that those are all wrong. It's you got to find out what's right for that person
Okay.
onto there. I mean, going and running a marathon's not right for everybody.
Mhm.
You know, but yoga might be right for them. So you got to keep them at their levels.
Okay, so if I strung out this thing and said, all right, how can I simply, without getting a whole bunch of things drawn from my body to take a look at it, it would make sense that if we postulated a statement that said, where we know there's acid, there's disease and fatigue.
Mhm.
On the other side of that coin, where there is alkalinity, there seems to be no disease, and fatigue seems to be down the road.
Right. Do you want to explain like what the difference? Because some people that are watching this might not understand when we're using terms acid and alkaline. What, just shortly, what one is compared to the other?
Well, proteins, when they metabolize, they drop to an acid base. And we're talking about a pH in the body right now, and that is a balance is 7. So we want it slightly past 7. So in mine, if you eat a lot of protein and sugars and things of that, toxins, they all, when they metabolize, produce acid. And that acid calls for a base over here to neutralize it. So calcium, iron, potassium, magnesium, all of those things are drawn from the body to buffer that pH that you just dropped it to. And in our situation, we're looking at a measurement within the blood. So if we could keep the blood slightly alkaline, we have created an environment that this disease just is not comfortable in.
Living in, like cancer can live in more of an acid part
Yeah.
of the body.
And a zero oxygen. So as we lower the oxygen, we know that that's the environment that cancer lives in. So our object is to teach people how to eat correctly. So it would make sense that if we're creating less acid, you could go longer. And if we produce something that cleaned the tissue, we would have a good chance. So this whole thing about insulin, it seems to be where everybody is struggling today. Where there's the presence of insulin, there's always some kind of encounter with disease.
Mhm.
So if we're loaded up on carbohydrates and we look at the insulin surge, I mean, this goes through the ceiling.
Right.
Now, you're talking to people all of the time about that subject matter. All right, let's reduce the carbohydrates and the sugars.
Right. Exactly.
So what do we replace it with? Well, Western science would say increase in protein. Well, we know that protein metabolizes to an acid.
Mhm.
And along with this, we really need to introduce people into how energy is made in the body through ATP.
Right.
That's the one incredible molecule that is so profound, and it makes 95% of the energy on the slow side, on the bottom side of all of the energy. And what we've done is we've gone to sugars and stimulants to do that. Well, I found it interesting that when we produce ATP, one molecule of carbohydrate produces 4 molecules of ATP. One molecule of protein produces the same, 4. And yet that's also producing an enormous amount of insulin. And fats, the very things that you and I both know, have been taken out of our food source because why?
Well, a lot of people think if you eat fats, you store the fat. They don't realize it's burning energy when we eat fats.
And the kicker here is 129 molecules of
Right.
ATP per molecule of fat.
Fat, exactly.
And how much insulin? It's a modicum.
Right.
So all at once we have just turned Western science and how they want us to eat around. And if we could do that one simple thing, do you realize all of the diseases that we suddenly left out? It's amazing.
It is.
And that's where we want to stop